Hey, Tracy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. How are you?
I'm great. How about yourself?
Good.
I'm gonna leave my camera off and mow down a Snicker bar really quick.
You're good. I just shoveled pasta in my mouth. Now my tummy.
Right.
Hey, Cheryl.
Howdy, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. How are you guys feeling about how the conference is going?
Good. I feel
Yeah.
like it's going well. Yeah.
No, it seems to be great. The breakout or the different sessions today were a great way to make contact at kind of a different level.
Good. Yeah. Tracy, you hosted one of the office hours, right?
Yes.
How did that go? That's the first time we've done that.
Well, it was better attended than I thought it might be, and people had really good questions.
Good.
And I feel like maybe there might have been a little bit of networking that takes place because people select those specific sessions because they have that interest in common.
Yeah, for sure.
It's funny,
Cheryl, go
I
ahead.
had a person that works in my own division just down the hallway attend the session, and he had no idea what I did.
Oh my God. No, you guys, there's so many things that go on where you guys are. Gosh, that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Cheryl, make you co-host just in case something happens to my internet.
Okie dokie.
I don't expect it to. That's just instructions in my host script. Hey, Sadie, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Your sound is good. Your picture's clear. Oops.
It's never fun when you turn on your camera and you confront your double chin.
Well, I'm realizing I have the wrong hairstyle for a virtual background. Like sometimes it disappears entirely. Like, oh gosh. Oh, funny. Okay, let me get my script up. Oh, there it is. Oops. Anything you guys wanted to touch on before we get going? Okay,
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
cool. Yeah, I sent out the final PowerPoint. And I have the questions that we kind of came up with. We brainstormed a little bit on that PowerPoint, and then I have them kind of on a separate document too, so we can go through those if people aren't asking questions.
Just thank you, Hannah, for your work putting it all together.
Oh,
and
yeah.
putting it on the same page. It's appreciated.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I mean, it's easy when Cheryl provided a template. It's like, just plug it in.
My office is still freezing, but I'm trying to like not put on the puffy jacket.
Oh, no.
Knew I should have worn shoes with socks today. Darn it.
Dang it.
All that wishful thinking.
Yep.
Is it cold in Helena today?
It says it's 60. It's sunny out
Oh.
there, but not
The
in here.
wind is literally uprooting my vegetables in my garden.
Oh,
That's not good.
I go home on my lunch hour and I poke them back in and give them a little water and a blessing and then come back to work.
Yeah, I did that with my basil yesterday. When I got home. I'm like, come on, you can do it.
Yes. Be brave.
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder why I even try to garden in Montana.
It's like the continual process of lowering expectations. Yeah, very different than my gardening in Seattle.
Oh gosh, yes.
Oh.
I think I've transitioned to the concept of growing more herbs because I dried a lot of them last year and I thought, well, that'll give you micronutrients over the winter.
There you go.
The vegetables. I'll never be able to grow enough to sustain myself. So
Oh no.
it's an effort and futility sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be able to grow enough tomatoes to can them and be able to have like canned tomatoes almost the whole winter without having to buy. But yeah, tomatoes do not like it here.
No, they don't. Hannah, aren't you in Missoula?
Yeah.
And you guys got like 2 weeks more growing season than we do here.
Yeah, we do. And yeah, I still spend, like $150 on gardening supplies to get $40 worth of produce.
Yes.
But it's fun or something.
Oh.
Yeah, I need a greenhouse. Then you can start a little earlier. But then my neighbor has this beautiful greenhouse and she bought a bunch of tomato plants early on. And then we had a really hot day and she like burned them all. And they all died. So I guess that's the other side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not for sissies at this zone, that's for sure.
No.
Did you network last night, Cheryl? Did you go out to listen?
Yeah, I posted a picture on the Hoover site.
Oh, was it good turnout?
Maybe about 20 of us. It might have been overrepresented by housing division staff.
Oh.
That's okay. A lot of some service people there. Sarah Lowen was there, someone from God's Love, someone that's connected with services doing fuse work through St. Pete's. So we had some good conversations about service needs, and hotel motel stuff came up for ERA. So got some interesting feedback there. So
great.
Yeah.
Good.
Suppose I should find the receipt that I put Pete's on my Pro card. It's the first time I put anything on my Pro card in like 2 years. So
yeah,
can't forget. I'm gonna make the accounting people mad at me.
Yeah.
Sadie, where in the state are you? Are you in Missoula?
I'm in Billings.
Yeah. Oh, in Billings. Oh,
Yes.
How's it going there? Is it chaos? Are people worried?
People are worried. They're hoarding water apparently, because we got a warning that our wastewater facility is like the water level's too high for them to process at volume, which shouldn't affect our drinking water at all. But people hear that and I don't know, freaking out. The flooding, it hasn't been too bad in most of Billings though. So
good. It's crazy.
I heard a report that Livingston, the new hospital they built, was being evacuated yesterday.
Uh-oh. Yikes. The flooding. Yeesh.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They
Livingston got
they
hit really
built in a
bad.
floodplain.
Should we start letting people into the,
Yep, I can let people in. I'm gonna go through like my host introduction speech, Cheryl, and then I'll just tell them my name and then I'll turn it over to you. And I know you're gonna have us all introduce ourselves, so I'll do my like speaker introduction during that time, not right away. So just so you know. Okay, I will admit. Hi, everybody. We've got another couple of minutes. People should be trickling in. As you join us, go ahead and mute your lines. Give everyone just one more minute to trickle in. As you join us, please do mute your lines. All right. Hello, everyone. Here we are right at 1 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Hannah Tester. I'm your room host for this breakout session. We're excited that you've joined us today. I'm admitting a few more people from the waiting room. Please do mute your lines and you can go ahead and use the chat function for questions. We do want to give a special thanks to the Montana HRDC Association, which is our sponsor for this breakout session. We will try and address all questions before the end of the session. Just a few housekeeping items before we get going. Oops. All sessions are being recorded. Please make sure you mute your lines and turn off your video while presenters are presenting. Please click the chat icon, select all panelists and attendees, and enter your name, organization, and location. You may turn your video back on during our Q&A time at the end of the presentation today. Each of you should have received a whiteboard paddle and a marker in the mail. If you find something inspiring, exciting, or new, write a quick adjective on the whiteboard, hold it up, and let us know during the Q&A time at the end of the session. can now turn the floor over to Cheryl Cohen, who is facilitating and speaking on this session. So to you, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and thanks everyone for joining us for this session on state partnerships responding to COVID-19 impacts to housing. We're going to do brief introductions of members on the panel, and then we're going to dive right into it. Our slide deck is, I think, pretty succinct, and we want to make sure we give opportunity for questions and answers and general conversation. So I'm Cheryl Cohen. I'm the Housing Division Administrator here with the Department of Commerce. And also joining me on the panel today is Tracy. Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Clark. I work with the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm housed in the Senior and Long-Term Care Division, but I'm aligned with the Office of Innovation, working on housing issues.
Thank you, Tracy. And Sadie is also joining us. Sadie.
Hi, I'm Sadie Michael. I work at Montana Legal Services Association with our housing practice group, doing compliance and work with the Montana Emergency Rental Assistance Program.
Thank you, Sadie. And last but not least, Hannah.
Hey, everybody, again, Hannah Tester, NeighborWorks Montana. I'm the Homeownership Director out of Missoula.
Excellent. So if you want to just move to the next slide, I'm going to give just a brief overview of kind of where we're at. And this presentation is focused on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So as many of you are aware, the 2020 CARES Act, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, and the American Rescue Plan Act resulted in over $400 million in new one-time only funds that were allocated to Montana Housing to deliver critical pandemic relief. And these programs included $352 million in 2 tranches of emergency rental assistance. We received $200 million in what's called ERA 1, and we were allocated $152 million in ERA 2, although the states only received $60 million of that. So due directly and indirectly to the ongoing COVID pandemic, many Montana renters were experiencing financial hardships and were at risk of housing instability. And we reviewed a September of 2020 study from the national, from NCSHA, the National Coalition of State Housing Agencies, that estimated between 10,000 and 30,000 Montana renters were in rent shortfall as of January 2021. And they estimated that we could be looking at an estimated 10,000 at risk of eviction. We also reviewed a report from Moody's Analytics that estimated between 14 and 19% of Montanans were behind on their rent and utilities, owing an average of $5,600 per household. And we also know that there was the CDC temporary ban on residential evictions that terminated on March 31st. So we worked really hard at Montana Housing in conjunction with our partners at NeighborWorks and BPHHS to launch our emergency rental assistance program as quickly as we could. And we were able to rapidly deploy the program and actually launch between the date the Consolidated Appropriations Act was signed into law and the date we launched the program in April 5th of 2021 was just 99 days. So a pretty brisk timeline to stand up a pretty sizable program. Next slide, please. So I think many of you on the call, oh, wait, there we go, are familiar with how we established the state parameters of the federal program. So of course, we can go back and serve households with rent and rental arrears, utility and utility arrears going back to April 1st of 2020, up to $2,200 a month in rent. We initially started with up to $300 a month for utilities, but increased that in February to $500 per month per eligible utility. And that was in response to the escalating propane and home energy costs that we've been seeing. We also support with a flat $50 per month for internet, as well as reasonable late fees, unpaid security deposits, and rent application and screening fees. Next slide. So you guys are probably familiar with our website. We tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. We have 1, 2, 3 steps. So check your eligibility. There's an income eligibility tool where a renter can put in their household size and county and see if they're eligible for the program. We also have steps to gather application paperwork or get application assistance. And Hannah will talk more about the application assistance through the proxy network later in the presentation. And then we also have YouTube tutorial videos for both tenants and landlords on how to apply, as well as frequently asked questions with the handy apply here that goes to the online application. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share just a few of our success metrics. So based on the federal eligibility criteria and those studies that I mentioned on rent delinquency at the time that we launched the program, we estimated we'd be able to serve between 7,000 and 8,000 Montanans with approximately $44 million of assistance, with an average award of about $5,600 per household. So the program's now exceeded our expectations. A little more than 1 year after we started administering the program, we've dispersed now $62 million to about 8,000 Montanan households. And over 3,300 of those households have also received continued assistance. So we can only do 3 months of assistance forward on any one application, and then a new application is required. Our average assistance, again, is over $7,700 per household, so we're exceeding our expectations there as well. And we currently have about 1,100 applications under review, although we are seeing an uptick in our application volume since we're doing a marketing campaign right now. So to put that amount of volume in context, that's actually more assistance than all of our regular Housing Choice Voucher or Section 8 federal rental assistance programs administered by our statewide public housing authority over the course of a year. So pretty impressive to launch a new program in 99 days and have these kind of results for a brand new program versus ones that have been in existence for decades. We've also prevented countless evictions and utility shutoffs, and Sadie will speak a bit more to eviction prevention. But most importantly, it's providing financial stability and peace of mind for families. And that's been really critical over the last couple of years. And our staff has been really good about balancing the need to get relief out quickly to families in need, but we also know that these COVID relief programs are pretty ripe for fraudulent activity. And so far, we've isolated around 1,700 potentially fraudulent applications requesting over $30 million of assistance. And we're doing that in partnership with our legal counsel, and we've worked with the Treasury Office of Inspector General and the State AG's office and other local law enforcement. Next slide. So I just want to share a couple, if Hannah, you want to move to the next slide. Always hard to find. A couple quotes. We do a post-award survey that goes out to award recipients, and we get a lot of really great feedback through that survey. So Lillian, who's a Montana landlord, responded and said that when my tenants found out they had been approved for funds from the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, they literally broke down in tears. I'm so appreciative that my tenants can now breathe, and the weight lifted off their shoulders is immeasurable. They don't have to choose between rent or food. Their children can now have a popsicle instead of being told they can't afford them because they had to pay rent. Thank you, State of Montana. And from one of the renters that we worked with, they said, without your program, I would definitely be homeless and lost everything that I owned. My hat is off for all the personnel that helped me and thousands of other people. This is a wonderful program to help get people back on their feet. God bless you all. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tracy Clark, that's going to talk about how Commerce and DPHHS have partnered on using an Emergency Rental Assistance Fund for what's called Housing Stability Services. Take it away, Tracy.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. What a great opportunity to be able to partner with the Department of Commerce. The two funding mechanisms that Cheryl talked about earlier made a provision for an opportunity for the Department of Commerce to partner with the Human Service Agency to develop housing stability services. And those kinds of services offer the opportunity to give more of a one-on-one individualized assistance to folks who need help to find or keep housing. And so back in October of 2021, the Department of Health and Human Services signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Commerce to develop and roll out the Housing Stability Services Program. And we were able to launch that in this spring, April, May of this spring. And this aligns with the eligibility requirements for the emergency rental assistance funds that Cheryl talked about. We're currently operating out of that ERA1 bucket. So you might hear me refer to ERA1 as emergency rental services, that first bucket. And for people to receive that individualized housing stability services, they've got to meet the same eligibility requirements. So a household cannot exceed 80% of its area median income. It has to experience a financial hardship due directly or indirectly to COVID. And one or more of the individuals in the household needs to demonstrate a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And that can include a past due rent notice or eviction notice, a past due utility or utility shutoff notice, or some other kind of instability such as unsafe or unhealthy living conditions, and the U.S. Treasury has said that could include overcrowding. So next slide, Hannah. So via that MOU with the Department of Commerce, we looked internally to see perhaps the best way we could launch our housing navigation services. Our housing navigators are providing housing stability services. And we partnered with our statewide network of human resource development councils, because a lot of those folks in their integrative way of delivering services had already housing navigators on staff or some sort of service provider that could easily fill this role. And so we look at these people to function as housing case managers in working with those individuals. And we expect them to do screening for eligibility and a comprehensive assessment to determine housing stability services needs, including barriers and preferences for housing. They also do a comprehensive social determinants of health screening to help identify other resources in a community that an individual might be linked to ensure their stable placement in their housing. They work to develop a housing plan in partnership with the tenant, and they make those connections to those community partners. They also monitor how the housing plan is going and ensure that those outcomes are successful in finding placement. The link at the bottom of this slide will take you to the Human Resource Development Councils. There are 10 of them across the state of Montana, and we're partnering with 9 of them who have housing navigators on staff, although there is statewide coverage for housing stability services through those housing navigators. I'll have you go ahead, Hannah, and go to the next slide. So far, some of the successes that we've had are just an allocation of $3.8 million out to that Human Resource Development Council network that's housing those navigators. This is really providing a new funding mechanisms for those agencies to bill for the housing stability services that they provide. I mean, it takes time to do a screening and an assessment and all of the work to support someone in a stable housing environment. And over the years, those housing navigators, where you can find pockets of them, and they sometimes come under many different titles, don't have a funding source for all of the work that they do. So from a policy perspective, this is pretty huge for us to be able to provide those agencies with an income source, if you will, to provide housing stability services and actually get paid for the work they have sometimes done throughout the years. And it's really become wild in the amount of housing stability services that are needed and how complex the landscape of housing is to navigate to find somewhere to live. So in part, we pick those HRDCs because they use an integrated service delivery model, and they've got staff on hand that are trained to identify the needs of individuals across a spectrum of programs. So they're a good kind of front door to not only provide the housing stability services, but if a person needs energy assistance or weatherization or any other assortment of community programs, they're good folks in their integrated approach to connecting people with those services. One of the great things that we've been able to achieve through this partnership with Commerce is also the development of a couple other programs. We collaborate closely with the Montana Eviction Intervention Program at the Montana Legal Services Association and the Housing Counseling Supports Program that Hannah's going to talk about later. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Sadie Michael with the Montana Legal Services Association, and she'll tell you more about those eviction prevention resources.
Thanks, Tracy. So as we said at the beginning of the presentation, I'm Sadie Michael, working at Montana Legal Services Association. Our role within this kind of partnership is a little bit different, is that we obviously focus on providing some legal services to tenants, especially facing eviction. We also partnered with the Department of Commerce to provide that eviction defense in October of 2020. So what that means is that we actually contract with a network of private attorneys so that they can work with tenants on their eviction cases, and then we're able to pay them through that ERA funding at a quote unquote low bono rate. And then the tenants, their services that they receive are totally free of charge to them. So we provide that assistance can look like advice, usually in the form of a 1-hour phone call, all the way up to full representation. Typically, the attorneys are providing information about tenants' rights, where they are in the eviction process, how to file a response, just general information about how to navigate this legal process in a way that we hope can delay or prevent their eviction from moving forward. So next slide, please. The other piece of our program is actually eviction navigation and MERA disbursement. So as Tracy talked about with those housing stability services, we also provide some client navigation for tenants who are going through our program. They will provide assistance with proxy applications to MERA, do referrals to other programs depending on the client needs, and working directly with the tenant to try and get their legal situation under control. That could mean helping them get documents, helping them communicate with their landlord, just providing general information that maybe is appropriate to provide before the person is able to get advice from an attorney. And thank you, Cheryl. I did see that MERA is Montana Emergency Rental Assistance, which I was just about to get to, so that's awesome. And that's the other piece, the big piece that we do is actually providing MERA assistance directly to those tenants. So specifically, we'd be looking at tenants who have a notice of maybe past due rent, a notice of eviction, anything that's been served to them through the courts. And then we would actually work with them directly to provide that MERA assistance instead of referring back to Department of Commerce so that they can try and get that rental assistance. So in those situations, what we do is work directly with the tenants and the landlords as the tenant is kind of moving forward, getting legal assistance, and try and use that MERA, those funds, and expedite them because the tenant is facing an eviction, and use that money to try and prevent, hopefully they can stay housed. If not, then we try to keep the eviction from showing up on their record. And so that's a big piece of what we're doing as part of this collaboration as well. And you can go to the next slide, please. And this is just a very brief overview of the judicial eviction process. This is something that the attorneys that we partner with typically provide advice to tenants on. You can see just kind of, this is a very general overview of what that process looks like. And at any point in this process, we would be looking at providing a tenant with, typically MERA, we want to get them with MERA assistance if the notice to vacate is due to past due rent, or advice or potentially referral for full representation. So that's a brief overview of kind of where Montana Legal Services fits into this collaboration. So I will go ahead and pass this over.
Thanks, Sadie. So again, Hannah Tester with NeighborWorks Montana. We are supporting this effort and partnering in, I would say, two different ways, and both of which you've heard Tracy and Cheryl and Sadie talk about already. One is the Montana Emergency Rental Assistance Proxy Network. What that is a network of organizations who assist people in applying for Montana Emergency Rental Assistance, or MERA funding. So NeighborWorks Montana, in partnership with the Department of Commerce, Montana Housing, began this partnership back in 2020, at the end of 2020. And NeighborWorks Montana enlisted the help mostly of our housing counseling network. So NeighborWorks Montana is a HUD intermediary organization, which means we have a network of housing counseling organizations statewide. So we enlisted the help of our housing counseling organizations, in addition to a couple of other organizations who were interested in and had the capacity to assist. And we trained proxies to apply for MERA funding. So the MERA application is entirely online, which we know provides a barrier to some people in accessing that. So the proxy network was introduced in order to overcome that barrier. So people can get proxy assistance in applying for this program remotely over the phone. And proxies will help with accessing that application, entering the data. They'll help people attach documents. And then they can also support in other types of referrals and connections if that's needed. The other network that NeighborWorks Montana is facilitating in this effort is the Housing Stability Counseling Program Network, and Tracy talked about that one. It's a lot like Housing Stability Services with some pretty key differences. Housing Stability Counseling Program, or HSCP, focuses on housing stability in the form of financial coaching and foreclosure counseling. So we're really, the way that HSCP and HSS, which is the program Tracy talked about, work together, is HSS is a lot more robust case management. And you can think of HSCP as that financial coaching piece of that case management. Our financial coaches are very well trained. They have access to a lot of training, a lot of tools and resources that can help people get back on track financially. There are 3 key indicators that we're focusing on in financial coaching, and that is increase in credit, increase in savings, and a decrease in debt. And our financial coaches have tangible supports and tools that can assist people with all 3 of those. Of course, we also work with homeowners. So our foreclosure counselors are able to provide a bridge in communication between borrower and servicer. Foreclosure counselors are trained and certified and know how to navigate foreclosures. That can be overwhelming for borrowers, for homeowners. And so foreclosure counselors are able to really help with this, navigate that foreclosure system along with people. Eligible clients is really anybody who feels unstable in their current housing. So they don't have to be behind. There's no income requirements. And we do work really closely with all all the other people on this call, the programs on this call, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So real quick on how to connect with a counselor. And again, when I say counselor, I'm talking about HSCP, Housing Stability Counseling Program. This first box is just at the very, very front page of our website. So if you go to nwmt.org, you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see this box. You can have people click on this button, says learn more, and they'll be taken to a page that has this blue box that just talks a little bit more about HSCP and has this orange button to take the assessment. The assessment will just walk them through maybe 7 questions. We try to figure out if they're a homeowner or a renter, and then where in the state they are. Really, that's what we're trying to figure out with that assessment. After they take that assessment, within 48 hours, they will receive a contact from NeighborWorks Montana. Our housing stability specialist, her name is Naomi Valentine, and she'll reach directly out to that client, and she will decide, is it a crisis situation? Do they need to apply immediately for MERA? Do they need to be connected? Non-legal services? Is it a high barrier case management situation where they need to be connected with housing stability services? Are they a homeowner? Should they be connected with a foreclosure counselor? So that's what Naomi will do for these clients. To connect with an application proxy, and reminder, when I say proxy, I'm talking about the folks that will help people apply for Montana Emergency Rental Assistance. It's again going to be on our website, front page of our website. This blue box is right next to that other blue box I showed you in the last slide. Again, they can click on learn more, and then they'll just search by county, and they'll be taken to this calendar that's county specific. And they'll be able to pick a date. Once they click on these dates that are available, they'll pick a time, and then they can get an appointment right away with a proxy. Proxies will call them at the time of their appointment. So I wanted to offer, I know, we all threw a lot of information at you. And one of the promises we made in this session description is sort of an acronym description. So I wanted to offer this recap slide just so you guys, hopefully we can kind of keep straight what we've all talked about. So Cheryl, Montana Housing, talked about Montana Emergency Rental Assistance. That acronym is MERA. They are application reviewers that they do all of the application review and administer the funding. And so that's a tangible support of the types of supports you can receive from social services. That one's going to be a tangible support, something, funding that will help with rent. DPHHS, which is what Tracy talked about. They have that housing stability services, that HSS support. They're called housing navigators. And then again, that's tangible because they're connecting people with types of support that can really have practical implications in helping them. And it's also a social support in that Tracy kind of talked very briefly about the type of emotional support that's really needed right now. These counselors are equipped, these navigators are equipped with being able to help people through the types of emotional stress that come with navigating their housing situation. Sadie then from Montana Legal Services talked about their eviction navigation, legal services, and their Montana Emergency Rental Assistance disbursement support. Obviously, we use MERA, Montana Emergency Rental Assistance, but then we also refer to Montana Legal Services as MLSA, and they're also called MLSA navigators. They have, again, more tangible supports, and then they have also they offer what we call an appraisal support, which is an opportunity for self-evaluation. And they offer that through kind of their legal services and their eviction navigation, giving people tools and resources to do a self-evaluation and then use those tools and resources to better their situation. And then I talked about NeighborWorks Montana. We have that MERA proxy network, and then we also run the Housing Stability Counseling Program. So we are proxies and we're counselors. HSCP is the acronym you'll hear that's associated with us. And we have, the opportunity for appraisal support through our for financial coaching, and then the tangible support, I would say, with our foreclosure counseling. The one thing I do want to reiterate or just point out before I turn it back over to Cheryl is these 4 organizations do an exceptional job in working together and in partnering and in constant communication. We have weekly phone calls where we are all together on the phone and talking to each other and ensuring people are going to the right place and ensuring all of our counselors and proxies and navigators and reviewers are on the same page in how each of these programs can assist Montanans. So Sadie, Tracy, and Cheryl, did you guys have anything you wanted to add to your recap before we talk about the future?
I think you did a great job, Hannah. Thank you.
Great. All right, so before we move to questions, we just wanted to touch on where we're kind of looking into the future. So Cheryl, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. So lots of things on the horizon with the 2 different buckets of emergency rental assistance. So first, we've recently launched a expanded marketing campaign to inform the public about the additional flexibility and eligibility for the second bucket of money called ERA2. The primary difference is that rather than a household needing to have a financial hardship due directly or indirectly to the COVID pandemic, they just need to self-attest that they're experiencing a financial hardship during the pandemic. So it's a pretty small nuance, but if you've seen, we've done some recent interviews, but really want to make sure that that word is getting out, particularly to seniors and persons with disabilities on fixed incomes. They might not have had like a wage loss or a direct financial impact due to COVID, but because of inflation and rent increases and other things that we're all observing, those families on fixed incomes are particularly impacted now during the pandemic, and we want to make sure that they are aware that these resources are available to them. The second kind of big milestone is that the Emergency Rental Assistance 1 bucket of money has an expenditure deadline of this September 30th, 2022. So over the course of the last several months, the U.S. Treasury has been doing what they call an excess fund determination. And we know that the $200 million of ERA1 that the state of Montana received wasn't really grounded in the actual number of income eligible renters or the number of income eligible renters experiencing COVID related financial hardships who were also at risk of homelessness or housing instability, which are kind of the 3 major eligibility criteria. So we did get our 3rd recapture notice last Friday. And so to date, we've now needed to return $98 million out of that $200 million back to US Treasury. So we still have sufficient ERA1 dollars to keep us through till the end of September, and in partnership with MLSA and DPHHS. But that's kind of an upcoming deadline for us. We want to continue working with DPHHS and the HRDC network and with MLSA to shift those programs that we've talked about to use the ERA2 bucket of money. ERA2 will be available until September of 2025. Although we have 60.8 million of ERA2 funds, we turned the dial to start administering those funds in early April of this year. So we're kind of moving from, really focused on ERA1, and now we're primarily using ERA2 dollars. And again, the helpful part with housing stability services is that there doesn't have to be that kind of due directly or indirectly to COVID criteria. And so by shifting to that ERA2, we hope that we'll be able to serve more folks as well. And finally, after a lot of kind of internal discussion within the Department of Commerce, we're trying to manage making sure that we're doing a good job with all of our regular programs, while also trying to administer all of these new federal programs for COVID relief. And where we've landed, and you might see if you go to the state of Montana employment page, we're currently recruiting for a MERA program manager, Diana Culver-Vaddix, the current manager, and she's going to retire later this year. And we've also posted a recruitment for what we're calling an ARPA housing program executive. So this person, should we be successful in that recruitment, the MERA program manager, the homeowner assistance fund program manager, and the person that we've hired to do all of the federal compliance and reporting associated with these COVID relief programs would start reporting to that person rather than to myself or one of my other managers. We just want to make sure that we can be proactive in all of the other important affordable housing conversations that are happening around the state, particularly as we ramp up for the next legislative session. So we're trying to find ways to make sure that we're best resourced. So if you or anyone is interested in working on some federal programs, those positions are posted and available. Tracy, do you want to talk about looking forward for DPHHS?
Sure. At this point, I think it's really important to look at continuing to develop the Housing Navigator Network. It's been my experience through several other projects within DPHHS that this is a unique skill set. Providing housing stability services is really specific and requires a skill set that isn't just case management, if you will. I would like to see that continue to be developed. And from a policy perspective, it's been a nice little crack in the door to providing a funding source for those housing stability services to provider agencies of housing navigation services. And I'd really like to see that continue to grow. I think the department should be looking forward in its participation in the ERA2 to continue the provision of housing stability services under that next bucket of funding. And it is, to me, really valuable to use the knowledge we gain from this partnership to inform the development of housing stability services in Medicaid programs, as is allowed by guidance from the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare.
Sadie, do you have anything that you'd like to add for MLSA?
Sure. So as our bullet points just kind of point out, as we're looking forward for our programs, we want to continue to grow our collaboration with private attorneys as part of that Montana eviction intervention program to kind of maximize the assistance that we're able to provide for tenants looking at eviction. As part of our MERA program, also wanting to work on increasing our output and turnaround time on those disbursements to better meet the deadlines that our clients are facing. And then, as mentioned by Cheryl and Tracy as well, is preparing to shift over to those ERA2 funds and everything that will entail as we kind of get closer to the end of September.
Thank you, Sadie. And Hannah, is there anything else you'd like to add before we open it up for Q&A?
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. So looking forward, NeighborWorks Montana, I mentioned those tangible supports that we're putting in place for those three financial coaching indicators: increased savings, decreased debt, increased credit. So we do have access to tools and resources that will help with like debt consolidation plans to reduce debt, will help with getting alternative forms of credit to report to the credit bureaus to help increase credit. And then we are in the very preliminary stages of working on a new IDA. There's another acronym, Individual Development Account, that will help support an increase in savings. So those are some focuses we have for the coming months for that financial coaching course. We're going to continue collaboration with DPHHS, MLSA, and Montana Housing, continued training for new counselors and educators. Right now, we do have statewide capacity to meet the need that we are, as far as need that we're seeing, right? But we do have an indication that we might not be reaching all of the need. So there might be an opportunity as we do more outreach and marketing that the need increases, and we'll have to be ready to provide more training for new counselors and educators that might enter the network. And then as far as NeighborWorks Montana as a whole, we do have a we have a focus on shared equity opportunities for homeownership. So that's kind of NeighborWorks Montana as a whole. We're really investing in shared equity models of homeownership. So,
and I would just
go ahead.
Add on that note, Hannah, that Montana Housing will be launching the ARPA Homeowner Assistance Fund program, likely before the end of this month. It'll be a soft launch, and then there will be likely some press that will go out after the 4th of July holiday. So we'll have continued opportunity to partner with NeighborWorks on the counseling piece and homeowner assistance support. So this will be the partner program to emergency rental assistance, and we're really thrilled that we're getting so close to launching that program as well.
Very exciting. We will be waiting. We're already waiting on pins and needles for that one. So cool. Yep. Thanks, Cheryl.
So let's open it up for questions and comments. Either raise your hand or you can type in the chat. And Hannah, I'm wondering if it would be helpful to turn off the slide deck so we can see if hands are raised a little bit easier.
Yep, I can do that.
Questions, comments? Have you had any connection with emergency rental assistance you'd like to share, good or bad?
Hi, Cheryl. This is Teresa. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I had a really good experience with you folks. I had a family I have a lady that was about to lose her home. She was in a trailer. She couldn't afford her lot rent. She was way behind on everything. And she was so appreciative of being able to get that assistance and keep her house. It really was a lifesaver for her. I just had another one that you guys helped that was able to, you can help with her lot rent, I think, because she's not behind or something to that effect, but you did help her with her utilities, which was a huge asset to her. Now she can concentrate on making sure that she gets caught up again. Kind of sending a lifeline out to some of these folks that have been behind has been fabulous for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. And we met last night, right? You're at God's Love here in Helena?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Glad. And Teresa and I chatted a little bit last night. One of the things we're also actively talking about as far as policy parameters is the use of emergency rental assistance funds to support homeless individuals or families with a temporary hotel or motel stay. And so there's a lot of kind of sticky policy things to mull around there. So we're in active conversations right now with DPHHS and our stakeholders to see the best way. We want to make sure that we're certainly providing folks the support that they need to keep them housed, even if it's a temporary situation, but to make sure that we're making that connection with housing stability services so they can have a housing navigator that's helping them look for a more permanent housing solution. All right, I'm just looking through the chat. Ginger Fancook with Montana Housing said that she had a friend that was going to possibly have to move out just before Thanksgiving last year. She told her about ERA and she's still in her apartment because of the help she received. So that's awesome. And Mary Melton said, just wanted to say thanks for all of you for helping many of our residents maintain their housing over the past couple of years. Awesome. And Kelsey's asking, is there any length of residency parameters or requirements? If an individual recently moved to Montana and is now facing homelessness, do they have access to the same resources as long-term residents? Yes, we don't have any questions in our application about the duration of their residency, as long as they can demonstrate that they have an obligation to pay rent and there's a legit kind of lease agreement. There are exceptions for if the applicant is currently homeless and we're working on those interim situations. But yes, there is no minimum residency requirement. And Dean indicated we've been hearing anecdotally of some informal landlord networks, particularly in smaller communities, who are talking amongst themselves about problem tenants. So if one of these folks loses their place, they are unlikely to be able to find another place, a kind of blacklisting. Has anyone heard of this? You know, I haven't heard about that, Dean, but I think that's something we would love to get some more information about. We have at the start of the emergency rental assistance program, we had conversations with the Montana Landlord Association about the design concept that we were running with. Our team also presented at the Montana Landlord Association annual meeting last month to give an overview of the program. And we actually heard a lot of positive feedback from about the 50 landlords or so that were in attendance at that annual conference. So a lot of them saying that the online application process was pretty easy and helped their folks get caught up. So that's unfortunate to hear that there may be some blacklisting going on. All right, I'm trying to keep up with the chat here. Kiana says that she's assisted multiple clients with MERA applications, and overall it has been amazing being able to assist some of my clients keeping their housing. Only hiccup observed with Spectrum in Missoula, reluctant with applying for any of theirs. So yeah, feel free to raise those things up to our level if there's things that we can help with, or if there's kind of more systemic challenges going on with particular parties. We are certainly happy to investigate those. And Cindy did indicate that she personally had a bad situation last year. Unfortunate to hear that, Cindy, but the rental assistance helped her and her family so much, and she was able to get back on her feet. Well, that is fantastic. And Kelsey said she'd also heard about the blacklisting and that there's a private Facebook landlord group specifically for discussing difficult tenants. Oh, quite interesting. You know, usually one would, you know, if there's, you know, an eviction on a record, or if there's, you know, arrears that are sent to collections, you know, if you do a reference check or a credit background check, that seems to be like an easy way to get information before you rent to somebody, but it looks like they're finding other means. Mary asks, so are we funding past September of this year? Yes, so the emergency rental assistance 1 ends September of this year, but the emergency rental assistance 2 that we received over $60 million for is available until September of 2025. So we're open and taking applications for this foreseeable future. Phew. Other questions or comments? So Sadie, we've got a few minutes left. Do you have any advice for folks who are working with someone, or maybe themselves personally are at risk of being evicted? What would be the advice from MLSA on what they should do next?
So if you are working with someone who is past due on their rent, and they maybe have received a notice from their landlord, or maybe things have moved and they've actually received a court summons, I would suggest contacting us immediately. And the best way to do that is through our website, which is just montanalegalservicesassociation.org, and it's right on the front page, just apply here. And what we would actually suggest you do is set that individual up, get them started with our online application, then one of our housing navigators will reach out and do an additional intake. And we would want you to get that in as soon as possible, because if there are court appearances or response deadlines or anything along those lines, and we can hopefully try and connect that person with an attorney to provide them with some advice on how to deal with that situation as soon as we can. So yeah, I would say anytime that there's a notice, if someone is worried that they might be evicted, you can even refer them to us and we can try and get on top of that before things start moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Sadie. And what about for Tracy or Hannah, or if there's any of your housing navigators or counselors on the call, what kind of trends are you seeing out there?
Hannah, would you like to go first?
I think, yeah, I mean, and I think this is kind of a lesson learned for us too, is what we have found is that people are dealing with a lot of really complex barriers right now. So it's not just creating a budget and learning to manage their money better, right? It's not just access to a social services. It's like a combination of so many things. And we're, you know, for the first time, the Housing Counseling Network is supporting people who are homeless, and you know, there's just no housing out there. So I think what we've found is that situations are really, really complex, lots more than we anticipated they might be. And Tracy talked a little bit about the skill set of a navigator, and what it really takes to support some of the situations we run into here in the state, which is why we're so grateful that we have all of these organizations as really close partners, because we're all really good at a few pieces of that, and people tend to need maybe every piece. Anything you would add to that, Tracy?
I would really second the comment about these situations being extremely complex. I've been with the department for almost 20 years now, and the kinds of stories and complexities that folks are navigating in the housing arena are unlike anything I've heard before. There are a lot of housing navigators I see in attendance on this, and I'm sure that you might want to weigh in with some comments. One of the most shocking things to me as we rolled out the program were how many people are experiencing homelessness. And those situations just have layers and layers of complexities. Not just are we needing to find and keep housing and work on our financial budgets and connect to food and utilities, but we're dealing with complex behavioral health issues and substance use disorders. You know, different law enforcement involvement in the cases. And your comment about the skill sets that are needed by housing navigators is really what's in my plate right now, is trying to figure out how to give that network the tools they need in a really big toolbox. And we're just really learning as we go how complex it is and what connections we can make to other trainers or people who can assist them, things like Social Security or our aging network. Those tenants don't have access to computers, so there's a little more individualized care that's needed. It's just really run the gamut in a way I've not seen before.
Thank you both. Yeah, I think we're fielding a lot of different types of scenarios and calls here at Montana Housing as well. And so just trying to make those appropriate connections with either counseling or housing stability services or eviction prevention. So we've just got about 5 minutes left. So a couple more posts in the chat. Wednesday indicated that private attorneys interested in getting paid to represent housing clients facing eviction can contact MLSA to learn about the Montana Eviction Intervention Program. So excellent there. And Angie is asking, is there a way to drop some emails in the chat and start a Teams group or something for housing navigators and support to turn to as a whole? I don't see why not. Tracy or Hannah, do you guys have any thoughts about the best way to handle that logistically?
Yeah, we're talking about, and this is to Angie specifically, we run a bi-weekly education call for our HRDC directors and housing navigator staff. So that leaves us an off week that we are going to turn into a peer support call. And so give us just a little bit of time to get that launched. I think that's kind of the support housing navigators could use in sharing the stories and work that they do with one another. And we know each community resources looks really different. So you can learn from one another in a similar community resources, depending on where you're at.
That's awesome to hear, Tracy. I didn't realize you guys were doing that with the off week, but I think because, some of the situations we're seeing out there are fairly desperate, we want to balance both, of course, we want to provide the services to those that need it. But, I think the last couple of years with COVID has had a major impact on people that work on the front lines in direct service. It's been a really challenging time, and these are positions that are not well compensated. And so providing an opportunity to debrief and get that peer support, I think is really critical, and giving people some tools that they need, because it can be tough working with folks, and it's hard to not take that on emotionally. All right. Well, Hannah, should I turn it back to you? Do you have any final housekeeping remarks before we wrap it up?
I do. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Sadie. Thank you all also for joining this session. Remember, you can always participate in community conversations through the Whova app to chat more. We will now be on a half-hour break and returning at 2:30 for our closing plenary session with Dr. Megan Sandel. So thank you so much for joining us, you guys. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.